My family risked my 17-year-old daughter's life by abandoning her in the woods in an area known for wolves.
She needs to toughen up,
My dad said casually.
"You're such a drama queen."
My brother added. I didn't shout. I did this. 3 days later, their lives started to collapse. I was standing in my dad's kitchen, watching the clock and stirring pasta that didn't need stirring. They were supposed to be back by now. My dad, my brother, and my daughter. It was just a day hike, the kind you brag about on Facebook. Nothing dangerous, except they were an hour late. And my dad doesn't do late. I checked my phone for the 10th time. No messages, no missed calls. Just silence. I told myself not to worry. That's what parents do, right? Pretend they're not panicking. Then the front door burst open. Laughter. Boots. A gust of cold air. My 12-year-old nephew Connor shouted something about beating his grandpa to the car. His 9-year-old sister Brooke waved a stick like a trophy. My dad and my brother Jason came in together, and Dad slapped him on the back, grinning the way men grin when they think they've just done something heroic. My daughter Haley wasn't there. I waited, smiling automatically. Maybe she was behind them, taking off her shoes. "Where's Haley?" I asked.
"Oh,"
Dad said, still half laughing.
"We left her there."
Everyone chuckled like it was a line from a sitcom. "Funny," I said. "So where is she actually?" Jason shrugged. "No, really." We left her. The smile slid off before I could stop it. "What do you mean, you left her?"
"She'll be fine,"
Dad said, hanging up his coat.
"She needed to toughen up."
That word, needed, hit like a cold drink poured down my spine. "You left my daughter." In the woods, Jason rolled his eyes. "Don't start." She was whining the whole time. She needed a little independence. "She's 17, I said. "That's not independence, that's—"
"Called life,"
Dad finished.
"She was slowing everyone down."
"It'll be good for her to walk it off." Connor laughed. "She was so annoying." Brooke giggled like it was a game. I took out my phone. Called Haley. No answer. Tried again. Voicemail. Tried again. Nothing. "Where exactly did you leave her?" Dad waved a hand.
"Past the ridge."
She knows the way back. I opened Google Maps, zoomed in on the trail name he mentioned. 6 hours on foot to the nearest road. The warning at the bottom said wildlife active area, wolves and bears common. I looked up.
"You left her 6 hours away, in an area known for wolves?"
Dad sighed like I was the one exhausting him.
"She's not made of glass."
Jason leaned on the counter.
"You're being dramatic again, Aaron."
That word again. Dramatic. The family favorite. I kept calling. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Still voicemail. Still nothing. "I'm calling 911, I said. Dad laughed. Actually laughed. "You're embarrassing yourself." "Then be embarrassed," I snapped and hit the call. The dispatcher's voice was calm, practiced. I explained what happened. 6-hour distance, underage girl, no contact for 4 hours. She transferred me to the county sheriff. I gave them every detail I could think of. Clothing, age, trail name, how long she'd been alone. They said they were sending a search team right away. When I hung up, the room felt too bright. My dad was still shaking his head.
"She'll be home before you get there," he said. "You'll feel ridiculous."
"You left my child out there alone," I said. "Do you even hear yourself?" He didn't answer. I grabbed my keys and left. The drive took forever. 3 hours of empty highway, the kind that makes you start praying even if you don't believe in anything. I kept my phone plugged in, calling over and over between updates from the sheriff's office. Each time, voicemail. Each time, silence. They told me a ground team was out with flashlights and dogs. They'd found nothing yet. By the time I reached the gas station near the trailhead, it was close to midnight. I sat there, engine idling, hands gripping the wheel, trying not to imagine every possible headline. Then my phone rang. "Mom?" Her voice was shaky, half crying, half furious. "Where are you?" "Are you okay?" "No, I'm not okay. They left me in the woods. Who does that?" I kept thinking it was some kind of joke, but then it got dark and she cut herself off, breathing hard. "I found a store. Just please come." I don't remember half the drive that followed. I just remember the glow of a convenience store sign and seeing her sitting on the curb, wrapped in someone's oversized jacket, dirt on her jeans, eyes red. When she saw me, she stood up, tried to smile, failed, and burst into tears. "They just left," she sobbed. "Grandpa told me to check the sign, and when I turned around, they were gone." I thought it was a joke. I waited. It got dark. I heard something move in the trees. I didn't say anything. I just pulled her in and held her until she stopped shaking. On the drive home, she sat in the passenger seat, silent, clutching the borrowed jacket like armor. Every few minutes I glanced sideways to make sure she was still there. Each time she was, breathing slow, staring out the window. The lights from passing cars flickered across her face like a heartbeat. Somewhere between one town and the next, she fell asleep. I kept driving. At the time, I didn't know it yet, but very soon, their lives would start to collapse. You don't just wake up one day and stop being the family joke. It's more like a long, slow unlearning, years of laughing along while they point, until one day the laugh gets stuck somewhere behind your ribs. My brother Jason was born first. 2 years older, louder, easier. Dad used to call us the team and the tag-along. Guess which one I was. Mom was there, but not really there. She'd drift through the house with a magazine, nodding without listening. The emotional version of background noise. Dad was the loud one. The gravity everything orbited. If you were scared, you got teased. If you cried, you got mocked. If you refused to laugh about it, you were difficult. By 10, I could already hear the way their laughter sharpened whenever it was aimed at me. It always started the same. Dad doing his motivational coach voice. "Come on, Aaron, don't be a baby." Then Jason echoing it under his breath, just loud enough for everyone to hear. They called it character building. When I was 8, Dad decided we were all going down the biggest slide at the water park. I said no. He smiled like it was adorable, grabbed my wrist and said, "You'll thank me later." I didn't. I hit the water wrong. Belly flopped so hard the lifeguard asked if I was okay. I came up gasping and humiliated. Jason laughed so hard he nearly fell off the pool steps. That night, Dad told me I had to toughen up if I ever wanted to survive this world. I was 8. The world, apparently, was already out to get me. Mom left when I was 12. She said she needed a break. Then she took it and never came back. Later we found out she'd moved to another state with someone else. Dad said she was weak. Said that's what happens when people can't handle life. Jason nodded like he'd just learned something important. I remember standing at the kitchen counter with a glass of milk that suddenly tasted like nothing. Dad looked at me and said, "You're not going to cry about it, are you?" I said no. I did anyway, quietly, later, where he couldn't see. When I was 17, I met a guy who didn't make fun of me for being scared of roller coasters. He called that cute. That felt like love. It wasn't. He left before Haley was born. At 18, I was living back at Dad's house with a newborn, telling myself it was temporary. He'd hold Haley like she was a prop in one of his speeches. "This one's gonna be strong," he'd say. "None of that crying nonsense." By the time she could talk, he was already calling her soft. I moved out after one particularly bad dinner when he told me Haley needed a real man around. I remember buckling her into the car seat that night, her tiny hand gripping my thumb like she knew exactly what we were leaving behind. We found a one-bedroom apartment with walls thin enough to hear the neighbors fight through. I waited tables, cleaned offices, took whatever shifts paid on time. I kept a jar above the fridge labeled college fund even when it was just spare coins. Every time I wanted to quit, I'd look at Haley sleeping, hair in her face, one hand still clutching a book, and promise her out loud that she'd never feel small in her own family. Mark, meanwhile, became the success story. Married Nicole, bought a house, had Connor and Brooke. Dad adored them, the perfect continuation of the team. Family gatherings turned into performances. Dad would brag about Mark's job, Connor's soccer trophies, Brooke's grades, then turn to me and say, "And Aaron's working hard too, right?" Like I was some cautionary tale of what happens when you don't toughen up. When Haley got old enough to have opinions, the comparisons started. She's too quiet. She's not sporty. She reads too much. Translation: she was me. I told her to let it slide. Maybe I shouldn't have. Every time they said it, I saw her shoulders sink a little further. A few years ago, Dad retired. Big speech, small party, new girlfriend. Trisha. She was young enough to call me sweetie without irony and wore gym clothes like they were a personality. Dad moved her in part-time. He bought a new truck, took adventure drives, started posting photos captioned, "Life doesn't slow down for anyone." Haley and I kept our distance, but sometimes we'd get invited for dinner because, as Dad put it, families should stick together. That usually meant I cooked and they complained about the seasoning. Still, I kept showing up. You can't fix what's broken if you stop trying, right? Then came the trip. Dad called it a bonding weekend. Jason was bringing the kids. They'd go hiking, maybe camp overnight. He said Haley should come. Good for her. Some male influence I should have said no, but Haley wanted to go. She said it would make Grandpa happy. I spent that Friday helping her pack. She asked if she should bring her chess set. I said probably not. They'd tease her. She laughed and said, "I'll survive." I kissed her forehead and told her to call when they got there. She rolled her eyes and said, "You worry too much." That was the last normal conversation we had before everything broke. Looking back, every piece of what happened makes sense in the worst way. The lessons, the jokes, the rules about not being dramatic. They all built to that moment when Dad could leave a 17-year-old girl alone in the woods and call it love. And I let her go because I still believed that deep down they cared, because I wanted her to have a family bigger than just me. Turns out, one of the hardest parts of parenting is realizing your child was never safe around the people who raised you. When people say everything's fine now, they usually mean it isn't bleeding anymore. Haley slept most of the next day. I didn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw trees, empty road, and headlights that weren't mine. By noon, she came out of her room wrapped in a blanket like she didn't trust walls anymore. She sat at the table, stared at her hands, and said very softly, "I don't want to see them again." I said, "Okay." She looked up like she didn't believe me. "Even Grandpa?" "Especially Grandpa." That was the first time she smiled, small, confused, like she was checking whether it was allowed. Later, she told me everything. They'd been arguing for a while, about her phone, about her attitude, about nothing that really mattered. She said she just wanted to stop for a minute, that she needed to use the bathroom. Dad told her no, they weren't stopping again. She'd have to wait until they were back near town. She asked again. Connor groaned. Brooke rolled her eyes. Jason told her to drop it. Dad finally slammed on the brakes, muttering that if she wanted to act like a child, she could go behind a tree like one. So she did. When she came back, the car was gone. She'd waited 5 minutes before realizing it wasn't a joke. Then she walked. Hours. She said the woods made noises she'd never heard before. I kept my face still while she spoke, but my hands were shaking on the table. The next morning, I called the sheriff's office. The woman on the line recognized my name immediately. "Oh, you're the mom," she said. "Is your daughter okay?" "She is now," I said. "I want to file a report." I could almost hear the room quieten on her end. They took it seriously. Underage, remote area, confirmed wildlife sightings. By noon, I'd given 3 statements, spelled every name twice, and attached the search report. When I hung up, I felt something strange, steady, like standing after a long swim. It wasn't revenge. It was gravity. The phone rang that evening. Dad. "What the hell did you do?" he said. "The sheriff just called me." "You called the police on your own family?" "You left my daughter in the woods," I said. "That's not family. That's a crime." "Stop exaggerating," he snapped. "She's fine." "Everyone's fine. You made us look insane." "Then maybe stop doing insane things," I said. Mark's voice came on next. He must have been on speaker. "Do you realize what you've done, Aaron?" They talked to me. I have kids. Do you know what that looks like? CPS could show up at my door. "Maybe they should," I said. "You're destroying this family," Dad shouted. "After everything we've done for you." "You mean after everything you've done to me," I said. "This is it," Dad said. "I'm done. You're not my daughter anymore. You don't call the cops on your own blood. You're out of the will, out of everything." "Good," I said. "Now we agree on something." He hung up. The silence after was louder than the shouting. That night I sat on the couch, laptop open, not really seeing the screen. Haley was asleep again, curled on the end like she didn't want the distance between us to get too big. I thought about all the years I'd tried to keep the peace, the dinners where I'd bitten my tongue until it bled, the phone calls I'd ignored because I didn't want to start another fight. Keeping the peace had never kept us safe. It had only kept them comfortable. I opened a folder on my desktop I hadn't looked at in years, documents greater than family, greater than legal stuff. Inside was a PDF labeled Walter Pierce Estate Trust, scan. Grandpa Walter, the only person who'd ever told me I was fine exactly the way I was. He'd died when I was in college, or would have been if life had gone differently. I remembered something about a good character clause. At the time, Dad had laughed about it. Your grandfather was old-fashioned. He thought morality mattered. Maybe it still did. I started reading, line by line, through legalese that smelled like dust and regret. And there it was. Any heir found guilty of criminal conduct toward a family member shall forfeit all claim to the estate. I didn't move for a full minute. Then I said, quietly to no one, "Thanks, Grandpa." The next morning, my phone rang again. It was Rick Dalton, Dad's drinking buddy lawyer. He cleared his throat like it was some kind of condolence call. "Aaron," he said, "I'm just calling to let you know your father's made some changes to his will." "You're no longer a beneficiary." "I guessed," I said. "He told me last night." "Well," Rick continued, "he's serious about it. Says family loyalty matters more than money." "I'm sorry, I'm not," I said, and hung up. By morning, I'd called Julia Patel, the only lawyer whose number I'd saved for emergencies. She was calm, practical, and exactly the opposite of everyone related to me. When I finished telling her, she said, "So you want to know if that clause is enforceable?" "I want to know if justice is," I said. She paused. "Let me look into it." Haley came into the kitchen halfway through my second coffee. She was wearing one of my sweatshirts, sleeves hanging past her hands. "What are you doing?" she asked.
Something I should have done a long time ago. She nodded slowly, like she didn't quite understand but wanted to trust me. Then she poured herself cereal and sat across from me, the same way she used to when she was little. We ate in silence, both pretending it was just another morning. It wasn't. That afternoon, a deputy called to confirm the investigation was moving forward. They'd interviewed my father and Mark. Did they admit to it? I asked. He hesitated. They said it was a misunderstanding. Of course they did. When he hung up, I laughed once, short, sharp, surprised at the sound. Haley looked up from the couch. What? She asked. Nothing, I said. Just déjà vu. That night I sat back down at the laptop. The trust file was still open. The words good character stared back like a challenge. I thought about all the years those words had been twisted into an insult. Sensitive? Dramatic? Weak. They'd said it like flaws, but they were the only parts of me that ever kept me human. I scrolled to the bottom of the document and started drafting an email to Julia. Let's do it, I typed. Then I hit send. Julia Patel's office smelled like coffee and determination. I'd sent her everything the night before. The reports, the call logs, my father's rant about cutting me out of his will. She flipped through a folder now, calm as gravity. So, she said, your father claims he left the house to your brother? That's the story. His drinking buddy called to make it official. Julia's mouth twitched. The one who isn't actually his lawyer? Yeah, that one. She nodded once. Then here's the good news. The house isn't your father's to give. It belongs to the Pierce family trust. Your grandfather's trust. I blinked. So he doesn't... No, he manages it. He's the trustee, not the owner. He can live there, maintain it, pay the taxes, but he can't sell it, gift it, or will it to anyone. When he dies, it automatically passes to you and your brother. I stared at her. So that whole speech about me being out of the will was performance art. I laughed once, half air, half disbelief. Julia turned another page. And you were right about the good character clause. It's right here. If a beneficiary harms a family member, they lose their share. Grandpa loved stuff like that, I said. He used to tell us morality mattered more than money. Then he was ahead of his time. I smiled, but it caught somewhere in my chest. Hearing it out loud made everything real. The fact that the house, his favorite trophy, had never actually been his. It wasn't just a house. It was the story he'd sold everyone. That he'd built something grand, that the Pierce men knew how to win. Market value, maybe $800,000. Pride value, priceless. Julia closed the file. I'll take it from here. The knock came a few weeks later. Dad and Jason stood in the doorway, twin storms in flannel. You really had to make this public? Jason said first. Dad didn't wait. You're making me look bad. Trisha's been asking questions. What do you expect me to tell her? I don't know, I said. Maybe the truth. He scowled. You're turning this into a circus. You called the police, now you're dragging us through court? For what? For leaving a child in the woods. It wasn't like that, he snapped. You've twisted everything. Jason shifted behind him. You're tearing this family apart. I didn't raise my voice. You did that yourselves. Dad jabbed a finger toward me. You're not family anymore. That's fine, I said. Family doesn't have to be inherited. He turned and walked off, muttering something about betrayal. Jason followed, slower, like he wasn't sure which side he was on. When the door shut, the apartment felt too quiet. I texted Julia the moment after. They came. I recorded it. She wrote back, Good. We're close. For a few weeks, life held its breath.
Haley was quieter but steadier. She started sleeping through the night again, started doing small things, reading on the balcony, cooking with me, laughing at bad TV. Sometimes she'd look at me and ask, "Do you think they even feel bad?" "Maybe," I said. "But that's not our problem anymore." The hearing came quicker than I expected. 15 minutes, one courtroom, no theatrics. Julia handled everything. The judge looked over the police report, the trust clause, the plea deal, and said, "The respondents are removed as trustees and beneficiaries and forfeit all interests in the trust." That was it. Julia leaned over and whispered, "Congratulations." I let out a small laugh. "That's what justice sounds like?" "Efficient, at least," she said. After that, everything changed quietly. Dad and Jason both lost everything. Dad moved out. Mark's wife started posting quotes online about forgiveness that didn't sound forgiving. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even cry. I just slept. Really slept. When Haley and I moved into the house, it looked exactly the same, but felt bigger somehow, like the walls had finally stopped holding their breath. Haley picked a soft green for her room. I picked white because I still hadn't decided who I was here. Julia called a week later to check in. "How's it feel?" "Like the house finally belongs to someone who won't fill it with ghosts." She laughed. "That's a legal win, and a poetic one." Haley starts college this fall, psychology. She says she wants to understand why people hurt each other and call it love. Last week she asked if I felt guilty. I thought for a long time before I said, "No, I just feel finished." She nodded. "Good." "That's better." "It is." The house appraised a little over $800,000. We own it outright. No mortgage, no landlord, no threats. For the first time in years, I don't stack double shifts or play Tetris with bills. The money I used to scrape into Haley's college jar now covers deposits and meal plans without a fight. Haley got into the University of Michigan. She talks about dorm curtains like national policy and pretends she won't cry on move-in day. When the acceptance came, she said, "I guess Grandpa finally helped." I said, "He did. Just not the way he meant to." As for me, before everything went sideways, I wanted law. Then I got pregnant at 18 and later never came. The trust changed that. With a roof paid for and the noise gone, I enrolled in a part-time law program. Not to chase a courtroom drama, just to understand the world that used to scare me. Dad went the other direction. He sold the truck, rents a cramped studio off the highway, and keeps the curtains closed. Trisha is gone. Jason keeps his distance. CPS still checks in now and then. We don't talk. Sometimes I pass Dad's building on the way to class. I don't slow down. I don't speed up either. I just keep going. The house is quiet these days, light in the mornings, soft at night. Haley calls it peaceful. I call it home. So, what do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe for more.